Procrastination is one of the most universal human experiences, something we all have struggled with at some point in our lives. You sit down with the intention to start working on an important task, whether it's writing a report, preparing for an exam, finishing a project, or even just tidying up your room. The intention is there, but instead, you find yourself scrolling through your phone, binge-watching a series, or convincing yourself that maybe you'll be more productive tomorrow. The strange part is that most of us know we're procrastinating while we're doing it. We're not blind to it. There's an inner voice that whispers, you should be working right now, but somehow that voice isn't enough to push us into action. This contradiction has puzzled psychologists, philosophers, and even everyday people for centuries. Why do we procrastinate even when we know it will hurt us later? Why do we put off tasks that could make our lives easier if done on time? And most importantly, what's really going on inside our minds when we choose to delay? To understand procrastination, we first need to recognize that it is not about laziness. This is perhaps the biggest misconception. People often confuse procrastination with being lazy, but research in psychology shows that they are not the same thing. Laziness is a general unwillingness to do anything, a lack of desire to exert effort. Procrastination, on the other hand, is an active choice to do something else instead of the thing you should be doing. A procrastinator may spend hours cleaning their house, organizing files, or reading articles online when they should be working on an assignment. The effort is there, the energy is being used, but it's misdirected. This is why researchers describe procrastination as a problem of self-regulation, not a problem of motivation. We are motivated, but our motivation is hijacked by short-term desires. One of the most influential psychological explanations for procrastination comes from something called a temporal discounting, a concept rooted in behavioral economics and cognitive psychology. Temporal discounting refers to our tendency to value immediate rewards more highly than future rewards. More highly than future rewards. When we are faced with a task, the benefits of completing it usually lie in the future. Finishing a project may lead to success weeks from now. Studying hard may lead to good grades months later. Exercising may lead to better health years down the line. But the discomfort of doing the task, the effort, the boredom, the challenge, is experienced in the present moment. Our brains are wired to favor immediate comfort over future benefits. This is why watching a funny video feels more attractive than starting that long essay. The pleasure is immediate, tangible, and rewarding. The essay, though important, provides a reward that feels distant and abstract. So procrastination is essentially a battle between our present self and our future self. The present self wants to avoid discomfort, while the future self is the one who pays the price. Brain research supports this idea. Studies using functional MRI scans show that procrastination is connected to the way the brain's limbic system, which deals with immediate emotions and rewards, interacts with the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for planning and long-term thinking. When the limbic system is more active, we give in to short-term pleasures. When the prefrontal cortex takes control, we make decisions that benefit our long-term goals. But the prefrontal cortex requires conscious effort to engage. It's like a muscle that needs practice. Without training, it is easier for the limbic system to dominate, leading to procrastination. This neurological tug-of-war explains why even highly intelligent and motivated people can struggle to overcome procrastination. It is not a matter of intelligence, it is a matter of how our brains prioritize rewards. Another psychological theory that sheds light on procrastination is the concept of task aversiveness. Research shows that we are more likely to procrastinate on tasks we find boring, difficult, ambiguous, or lacking in personal meaning. If a task feels unpleasant, our natural instinct is to avoid it. This is not laziness, but emotional regulation. We delay the task not because we don't want to succeed, but because we want to avoid the negative feelings associated with starting. For example, a student might delay studying because the material feels overwhelming. An employee might delay finishing a report because they fear their work won't be good enough. In both cases, procrastination is less about avoiding work and more about avoiding uncomfortable emotions like anxiety, frustration, or self-doubt. This is why some psychologists describe procrastination as an emotional management problem. We procrastinate not to escape the task itself, but to escape how the task makes us feel. Perfectionism also plays a major role in procrastination. Many people assume that perfectionists are highly productive, but research shows the opposite is often true. Perfectionists set unrealistically high standards for themselves, which makes tasks seem intimidating. They fear that their work will not meet expectations, so instead of starting, they delay. This creates a cycle of stress and avoidance. In psychology, this is called the fear of failure paradox. The fear of not doing something perfectly prevents people from doing it at all. Ironically, this leads to lower performance, reinforcing the very fears that caused the delay in the first place. Over time, this cycle erodes confidence and creates more procrastination. Procrastination is also deeply connected to self-identity and self-worth. Some people procrastinate because finishing a task exposes them to judgment. As long as the task is incomplete, they can protect themselves with the excuse of, I could have done better if I had more time. This defense mechanism is called a self-handicapping. By procrastinating, people create an external reason for potential failure. If they do poorly, they can blame procrastination instead of questioning their abilities. It becomes a shield for self-esteem. The problem is that this shield prevents growth and progress. Avoiding effort protects us temporarily from disappointment, but costs us long-term fulfillment. Interestingly, research shows that procrastination is not a modern problem caused by smartphones and social media, although these tools certainly make it worse. Historical records show that philosophers like Socrates, Aristotle, and even writers like Victor Hugo complained about delaying their important work. Hugo famously battled procrastination while writing his novels, even resorting to locking away his clothes so he couldn't leave his house and be distracted. The difference today is that distractions are more abundant and accessible. Our phones, apps, and endless entertainment options give us instant gratification at the tap of a screen. This makes the battle between the present self and the future self even harder to win. Every time we procrastinate by scrolling through social media, our brain gets a small dopamine hit, reinforcing the behavior. Over time, this conditions us to seek short bursts of pleasure instead of focusing on long-term goals. But here's where encouragement comes in. Procrastination is not a permanent trait. It's not something fixed in your personality. It's a habit, a pattern of behavior that can be changed with awareness and practice. The same brain that has learned to seek immediate rewards can also learn to focus on long-term benefits. Psychologists emphasize that overcoming procrastination starts with self-compassion. Many people believe that beating procrastination requires being harder on yourself, but research shows that self-criticism often backfires. When you beat yourself up for procrastinating, you increase feelings of guilt and shame, which are exactly the emotions that trigger more procrastination. Self-compassion, on the other hand, allows you to acknowledge your struggle without judgment. Instead of saying, I'm lazy, I'll never change, you say, I procrastinated today, but I can try again tomorrow. This shift in mindset reduces the emotional weight of procrastination and makes it easier to take positive action. Psychologists have also identified practical strategies that help reduce procrastination. One of the most effective is breaking large tasks into smaller, manageable steps. When a task feels overwhelming, our brains interpret it as a threat, triggering avoidance. By dividing it into small parts, we reduce the sense of threat and make progress more achievable. Another strategy is to use deadlines, either external or self-imposed. Deadlines create a sense of urgency that activates the prefrontal cortex and helps counteract the pull of short-term rewards. However, research suggests that self-imposed deadlines are not always as effective as external ones, so finding accountability through others can be helpful. Another well-documented technique is called the 2-minute rule. The idea is simple. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. For larger tasks, commit to working on them for just 2 minutes. Often, starting is the hardest part, and once we begin, momentum carries us forward. This aligns with something called the Zeigarnik effect in psychology, which shows that people remember unfinished tasks better than completed ones. Once you start, your brain doesn't like leaving things incomplete, so you're more likely to continue. Starting creates a mental tension that pulls you toward finishing. Reward systems also play a role in overcoming procrastination. Since the brain craves immediate gratification, pairing work with small, immediate rewards can trick the brain into staying engaged. For example, you might allow yourself a short break after 25 minutes of focused work, a technique known as the Pomodoro method. Over time, this trains the brain to associate effort with positive feelings instead of dread. Similarly, changing your environment to reduce distractions makes it easier to stay focused. Research shows that people who study or work in environments with fewer distractions procrastinate less. This is not about willpower alone. It's about designing an environment that supports your goals. Note your goals. Another key insight is the role of identity in beating procrastination. When we see ourselves as someone who is always procrastinating, we reinforce that behavior. But when we shift our identity and begin to see ourselves as disciplined or consistent, even in small ways, our actions align with that self-image. For example, instead of saying, "I'm trying to exercise more," say, "I am the kind of person who values health." The identity-based habits are powerful because they connect actions to our sense of self. Every time you follow through, even on a small task, you reinforce that identity and weaken the habit of procrastination. It's also important to understand that procrastination doesn't mean you lack ambition or discipline. In fact, many procrastinators are ambitious dreamers who want to do things perfectly. The key is learning how to manage your emotions, expectations, and habits. By reframing procrastination not as a personal flaw, but as a common psychological challenge, you remove the stigma and open the door to solutions. Everyone procrastinates sometimes, but it doesn't have to control your life. Think about this. Every time you procrastinate, you're borrowing happiness from your future self. You're giving yourself a little comfort now, but you're creating stress, pressure, and regret for tomorrow. At the same time, every small action you take today is a gift to your future self. Imagine how relieved and proud your future self will feel if you take even a tiny step forward now. This perspective shift can be powerful. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like doing this now?" ask, "What will my future self thank me for?" When you frame actions this way, you strengthen your connection with your long-term goals. Psychology teaches us that willpower alone is not the solution. Willpower is limited and can be depleted. What really helps is building systems, habits, and environments that make procrastination harder and productivity easier. For example, leaving your phone in another room while you work reduces temptation. Planning tasks the night before reduces decision fatigue in the morning. Starting your day with one small win creates momentum for bigger tasks. These are not signs of weakness. They are smart strategies based on how the human brain works. Ultimately, procrastination is not about laziness. It's about the complex interaction between our emotions, our brain's reward system, our fears, and our self-image. It's about choosing short-term comfort over long-term fulfillment. But the encouraging truth is that by understanding the psychology behind procrastination, we gain the power to change it. We can train our brains to tolerate discomfort, break tasks into manageable steps, practice self-compassion, and build habits that support our goals. Progress may not happen overnight, but every step counts. And each time you resist the urge to procrastinate, you strengthen your prefrontal cortex, reinforce your identity, and bring yourself closer to the life you want. So the next time you feel the urge to delay, remember that it's not a sign of weakness, and it's not proof that you're lazy. It's simply your brain trying to protect you from discomfort. Acknowledge it, but don't let it control you. Take one small step, no matter how tiny, and let momentum carry you forward. Over time, those small steps accumulate into big changes. And when you look back, you'll realize that overcoming procrastination was not just about getting things done. It was about building resilience, discipline, and self-respect. You'll see that you are capable of much more than you once believed, and that the battle against procrastination is really the journey toward becoming the best version of yourself.